Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jen Louziotis. I'm so grateful that you've all joined us today for the webinar, Lead with Your Authentic Self to Create a Soulful Brand. I'm really excited to bring together two women who I adore and two women that I've worked with on a professional basis, and that's Karen Garvey and Malika Malhotra. Karen brings with her years of experience as a channel. She works with the divine and she helps coach people to find their fulfillment. And she channels in her information, but before she worked in that capacity, she holds her own MBA and she worked for years in the business world. And Malika, on the other hand, is a branding and marketing specialist, and she's fantastic at what she does. In addition to that, she's a photographer. Both these ladies have written their own books, many books in their own right. Karen has a series of books called The Answers. And Malika, you just completed the Branding and Marketing Playbook, which came out, I believe, in July.
Yes.
So thank you, ladies, so much for joining me. When I knew I wanted to create something looking at business, but yet using intuition, both of you came to mind for me. And I think that's obviously on purpose. And Malika, I just said this to you. Karen, while you are now a conduit for information from the other side, you've spent years in the business world. And Malika, while you're working in branding and marketing, you're using your intuition every single day as what, you know, as a message, as a way to get your messages from your clients to the world. You know, there's no doubt in my mind that you hone your own intuition and you work on what feels right for your clients and for yourself, and then you go ahead and help them market that out to the world. So you guys are kind of a juxtaposition, which is actually what I wanted in terms of this webinar. I really feel like for my own self, I was born into a family that was a business family. My father was a CFO, so I grew up around businesses, and my mother ran her own business. But from the age of 4, I was very curious for the unseen and for the other side. And I didn't have words to put to that, but as I grew, I understood more that I wanted to learn more about intuition. And I thought it was a perfect backdrop, having grown up in a family that was all business, but yet I was working, you know, as to how to feel energy and how to work with energy. And that's what I really think the world is about today. And that's what I think that we're meant to do. We're meant to take all 5 senses that we have and then go ahead and intermingle our 6th sense with that. And so in thinking about putting something together, I wanted to bring the two of you together because I think you both do that really well. You both work with your intuition, but you've got that business side. And so we can embrace the logical, we can embrace what we know that's trending. But for me, I think if we take an inside out approach to life and really lead with that intuition, that makes the difference because it shifts the energy. So today we're going to be talking about how to do that in marketing. I'm used to doing this with people, with clients that I see in their personal life, but recently I've started to do it in business. And I think when we throw our intuition into something, it really sets things apart. It's really a part of who we are, and it anchors the energy and transforms the energy. And I think that we're always working with a backdrop of what we can't see, right? Energy is always around us. And when we lead from that part of us that is uniquely ourselves, I think it transforms. But I don't think people do it regularly. And I, especially in business, don't think that they do it a lot. So that's what I'm hoping that the three of us can talk about today, in hopes that all of our audience tuning in can really understand how to take a different look at marketing and branding and have some fun. So with that said, I want to thank you both for joining me. And as we move throughout the webinar, I'm going to be turning to both these ladies, and I'll probably turn to Karen first for a little bit of the soul piece, And then Malika, I'll turn to you to kind of help us with the practical. And Karen, that doesn't mean that you can't add in years of experience, and vice versa, Malika. But I'm just telling our audience that, hold off on the questions. We'll do Q&A at the end. And some of your questions might be answered as we roll through. And then if you're catching this, I'm going to record it. It's recording, so we're going to throw it out to people who couldn't make today. So if you have questions, if you're viewing it at a different time, email me and we'll get you the answers. So Karen, I think despite what the headlines say, we're really living in a fantastic time. And I know from working with you and reading your books that this is really a time where people are awakening and opening up to their intuition. So I'm wondering if you can sort of set the stage for us and give us a little bit of soul history, because I think when our listeners understand that, it's going to open us up to how to look at branding a little bit differently. So,
yeah, sure. Now, we have to always remember that the media, their goal primarily is ratings, and good, heartwarming stories and good, courageous people doing wonderful things is not necessarily going to lead. So what we are bombarded with in the information world, where we're getting information from all different directions all the time, we're going to see a greater percentage of what we're perceiving as being negative in the world. So it can give us a skewed view of what's actually happening out there. As an antidote to that, on Facebook, I started a page called Piece It Together. And I really just encourage people to go out and find those stories where people are doing great and courageous things and helping one another and being kind and doing things that just make you laugh or cry, and get a glimpse into that these are the stories that we're not necessarily hearing on a regular basis. But if you turn off the news and you don't listen to people debating back and forth in social media, their own perspective and views, the things that they're angry about, and you really go out there and you look in the world, like even when you're just doing your own transactions, going to the bank, going to the grocery store, going to a party, you'll see people really are kind and wanting to connect. And a lot of what it is that we experience individually comes from our perspective and our belief system. I always make a note that there was a funny week when I had two people come from other countries into Manhattan to see me, and they were both in New York City for the first time that week. And they were both from the Mideast, so they had a similar, at least cultural upbringing. And, I started out the sessions, first time in New York. So what do you think of New York City? And the first person says, it's just dreadful. Like, everyone's so unfriendly. They keep to themselves. No one reaches out. No one helps. And I was like, oh, all right. Well, hopefully you'll bump into a, better batch. So then later in the week, I say the same question. I ask the same question to the second client. And the answer that I got was, I can't believe how friendly New York is. I wasn't expecting this. Everybody's so kind and helpful. Everyone's willing to stop and help me. And I, it was so interesting that they should happen back to back like that, because it helps you to see that your perspective is going to magnetize in what it is that you directly experience. And if you want to experience more of that goodness in one another and that interconnectedness, then that should be your lens of view as well. But as far as enlightenment and where we are right now, the increase in enlightenment it's inevitable. We can witness it by looking back decade ago and 2 decades and 3 and 4, and it is inevitable. So my feeling is, especially with 2018 through 2020, you either get on board or you're going to be shuffled out. You're going to be cast aside. In other words, intuition and being heart-centered and honoring those with whom we work and the planet on which we live is going to be an essential ingredient to business success.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, Karen, to that point, and Malika, I'm going to ask you in a second how you feel, if you've seen a difference in your clientele in the last couple of years. To your point, Karen, I feel like, and I've read this somewhere, there's an abundance of clients that people have that are out there. There's clients for everyone. So anyone in a business, or if you're working for a 500 Fortune company and you're, working with people one way or another, it's there for you. And I think it reflects back to your belief system and what you believe about yourself. And that's why for me, I felt like in this webinar, helping people understand what makes them different could be a way for them to start to tap into that space and change those beliefs or take a look at the beliefs about themselves. Because Karen, you wrote in your books that we're meant to be individual thinkers. We're not meant to think in a group. And so if that's the case, do you feel like it's that we came in already with what we're meant to share? Because that's how I believe it. But can you expand on that a little bit more? And then Malika, I do want to ask you about what you're seeing in terms of branding and what's kind of come in for you the last couple of years.
I see us as being evolutionary as souls, and then in our own lifetime, we evolve as well. So we can have changing desires and changing interests, and we may, reinvent ourselves periodically along the way. But the formula is basically the same, that in any given moment, if you look at a slice of what's going on for you, it's important in order to achieve whatever success that it is that you want, whatever your definition of success is, that you tap into exactly that. What makes you unique? What makes you passionate? What gets you excited? What makes you get up in the morning and just feel very excited to be you? Because you can have a career idea in mind, and then you can research all of the steps to get there. But if you're not passionate about the pursuit, and everything that you're doing is perfunctory and necessary and a bit of a burden, it's going to be really impossible to draw in a tremendous amount of energy and the right clients and abundance when you're putting that out as the attractor. So being passionate and excited, it doesn't mean that every little detail is going to be fun, because it really isn't in any career, but overall that you're following what makes you feel excited. And also note that I know the word intuition sometimes, that's kind of intimidating to some people, because you think that you're going to, just sit here at your computer and a sign's going to come across, open a yoga studio. And then if you're not seeing that sign, you feel inadequate or disconnected. But intuition is also that energies are communicating with us all the time by pointing us directly through messages and signs, but also through our thought energy. So I really make a strong suggestion that people write down their good ideas as they pop in their heads and just keep a log at it. In the moment, it feels doable. You might go back, 15 minutes later and say, I don't have the resources, I don't have the time, I don't have the expertise, I don't have the credentials. But at the second when you have that great idea, it felt like you could do it. So as long as you're keeping a log, you might find later when you move to the logical side of your brain and it feels insurmountable, you might realize, you know what, this is me. I got to get myself out of the way. This is doable. I can do this, and it is a good idea. Let me work through this fear. So that log book, just keep referring back to it, and it can help be the intuitive director to guide you toward your best path.
Oh, I love that. And Malika, I want to go to you, because branding and marketing, Karen, as you were saying, intuition can feel intimidating for people. Malika, I feel like branding and marketing, the minute those words are out, that can feel intimidating too. Do you find that with your clients? Do you find that when they go to approach their business, that they've got not a wall up, but it's a different kind of energy? And if we can bring in what Karen was just saying, would it shift it? So is branding and marketing something that's hard for people to look at?
I think when you're new in business, it is definitely an obstacle. It's something hard to really understand, because a lot of people that are just launching are just really starting to just get the name out there, get their business on its feet. And I think branding is very different than business. Like, we're all in business. Business is just transactional, right? It's about products and services. Whereas a brand is an experience. It's cultivating a relationship with your client and having a feeling or a story associated with your brand, so that there's this connection, this human connection, and why people continue to come back to you, and then why they might share you with their friend. It's much more personal. And so I think it's hard to think in those terms when you're just starting out. But when you've been in business for a few years and you're realizing that your market or space might be saturated and there are so many people doing the same thing as you are, that's when you start getting that like aha moment that you need to sort of figure out your point of difference, and you need to start differentiating yourself so that you can find that dreamy client instead of trying to service everybody. And so it's like shifting that, jack of all trades kind of a brand, that like one size fits all type of a brand, to being a little bit more specialized, niching down maybe in your product or your customer or your price, but really trying to figure out where you are in the market and what you can own. And that takes work. And I think sometimes, you start this business and you get so bogged down with the day-to-day that we forget to roll up our sleeves and really dive into what we already have, like you guys are talking about. And I see it as our own story, like to really sort of peel back the layers and start with, what experience have we had in life, like before you started this business? Maybe you worked in corporate, maybe you have, some financial experience. Maybe you've, lived all across the country. So you have some like experience of like dealing with different people in different environments in different places. There's so much that we can sort of brain dump on a piece of paper to help define who we are and what our experiences are. And then kind of leading that into why we started this business in the first place. It wasn't just to sell photos for me, for example. It was, a way to maybe connect. And so to think a little bit bigger than, again, your products and services, and try to define your mission or your why behind it, and what your values are that you believe in as a business owner. And once you start asking yourself some of those hard questions, I think then you start seeing where you are different than everybody else in the market. And that's where your brand starts to take shape and form.
Mm-hmm.
But as someone who's new or someone who's just emerging, sometimes it's hard to even think big picture like that, because you're just trying to, get through the day and get through your email and attend a networking event, or just trying to sell your services. But it's really important, I find, with my clients, is to take that step back and really get into sort of the story of who you are as a person, what's your personality, because all of us have a different personality. So when you layer that on top of the service, the value that you're offering, already you're starting to like get yourself into your own space. But then you have to add in your skill set. Maybe you add in the things you believe in, your philosophies, maybe, the whole process. Maybe there's something really unique about your process that you do that nobody else is doing. And so it's kind of like all the pieces to the puzzle. We were talking about a puzzle that when you put it together, then you're really able to carve a place for yourself that might be different than other people in your market. But it does take work, and it does take that sort of self-discovery, and it's always evolving. So sometimes people get frustrated with that too, because over time, when you're in business, you learn new things. You figure out what works, what doesn't work. Maybe you get closer to that dreamy ideal client, and then you're constantly tweaking your brand because it's sort of a living and breathing entity. So that's also hard for many, including myself. Like, every year things are changing. And so how are you going to adapt, and how are you going to shift your story and your message with your audience?
Mm-hmm. And I think that sort of speaks to Karen's point about carrying around a little notebook, Malika, because do you find that when you were talking about people getting bogged down in the everyday, in the mundane, that Karen as well, do you feel like that can block ideas that might want to come in? And so when you hit that spark and you can write it down, you can go back, I think, to the energy of the moment that gave you that spark, because I feel like that's when it comes from your authentic self and who you are. And Malika, you're right. You that's probably why people wanted to go into a certain business. If it's linked to that, then that energy is going to carry through with the idea. So Karen, how do you take that spark one step and push through when you feel like you've got too much going on and that it's too overwhelming? How do you move through the soul piece or get that to come back to the forefront while you have to go ahead and do all the busy work?
That's a great question. It really is. I notice with clients and myself that time really is like a vacuum, especially if you have your own business and you're not working a traditional 9 to 5, and you extend your hours into, evenings, when you find some quiet, when you can get something done. And therefore you feel like anytime you're not doing something that has to be attended to in your personal life, then that you belong to your business. One of the things that I did is to make sure that I started to really block time. It's funny how if you are an entrepreneur, you tend to take your calendar very seriously. For me, I don't break appointments. I don't cancel seminars. I go where I'm scheduled, period. If anything ever gets canceled, it's because somebody else canceled it, not me. And for that reason, I know this is going to sound really, really unflattering for a moment, but when I started to get incredibly busy, I would actually put a block for each of my 3 kids on my calendar. And I didn't tell them that because I thought it sounded, insulting. But what happened was, as I had that block, I started to put myself 100% there with whichever kid I was with in the moment. And I didn't worry about what was going on with business. I didn't feel drawn to an email. I was so there for them. And it made it great because we had time where maybe we were doing something scheduled where they always, talk about quality time, but sometimes it was just nothing. I was doing nothing with them. And so when I started that process, it helped me to be able to actually shift from being on to understanding that my work role is to support the happiness of my personal life. And the same is true with blocking out the things that keep you whole, honoring your body, honoring having whatever spiritual or soulful pursuits that it is that you have. So for me, I know I used to be like, oh, I got to go running. 10:30 at night. It's like, oh, I didn't go running yet. And I run out the door and I go for a run. But you start to realize, you know what? If I have no appointments between 10 and 11 in the morning, I can go out for a run there, but I got to schedule it in as though it is an appointment. Otherwise, it's going to get filled up with one more phone call or one more thing to take a look at. Well, we can always add more to our business. We can always write another letter, write another essay, do another blog, but we can't get back that time when we're working on our interpersonal relationships, living the life that it is that we are creating that's not necessarily connected to our business. The other part of that too is that those things, going out for a run or meditating or playing with your kids or doing nothing, they're not frivolous because they also help you to shift from living in the left brain to moving toward the right brain where intuition, creativity, good ideas, and all of that fun stuff just gurgles up. And if you don't make the space for those opportunities and those moments, then that's when you start to become burdened with stress and some of the different things that come as a product of stress, which is body disharmony, being cranky, not sleeping at night. So, like I said, it might not sound flattering if you're scheduling in your kids, but the point is schedule in the stuff that matters to you. Schedule in the stuff that's important to you and it keeps you whole and balanced and quiets your mind and makes you feel fueled.
That makes sense because, again, I think that gives you a rest, if you will, from the business end or to have those ideas come to the surface and know them. Malika, it's interesting because you have a photography business as well as your marketing and branding, and it sort of serves together. So it's got to be kind of interesting for you as an aside, because when you're doing your photography business, it's a business, but yet you're seeing your clients at home, so to speak, right? You're seeing the interpersonal and you're capturing. I love photography because you're capturing, I think, who somebody is on film, and you've got a way to kind of zero in and capture that moment for people. What do you feel? How do you tell your clients to tap in to that space? Do you do like what Karen does? I mean, do you tell people to take breaks? How do you, because you pull it out in such an interesting way. You do it with the story, but you can also do it with a visual. Do you find when clients look at themselves on film that they go, oh, that is me. There's that spark back.
They do. And I think, in my process, I always start with the strategic side. That's really important. And it's all about this download of their story, all the things that we spoke about before, understanding your why and your mission, understanding the things that you believe in, defining what your personality is like, what are the things that you're passionate about, what is your process like from A to Z, getting all of those intel on paper so that when we can figure out what your visual story is, we pull from what your actual story is. What are things that you've done in your business career before that we can pull into your story? All of those things are going to help position you differently than other people in your market. And so once we do that strategic work and really get clear on their story, on their message, what happens is that my clients then start to feel really confident that they finally figured out sort of the platform, their expertise, what they want to be known for. And it's that magic that then comes into the photography part, because now they feel like they know what they want the world to see them as. And then we layer in maybe some hair and makeup and some styling. And then they're ready to express themselves fully because we have done that work. We've taken the time out, got the notebooks out, brain dumped, and really have figured out what is the story that they want to tell the world and how are they different, not better, but different than other people in their space. And so once we have the photo stories of, maybe showing them in their workplace or showing them doing some hobby or practice that they love, all of those different layers put together makes their brand really come to life. And then when they see that at the end, they're ready to then post on Facebook and on their website and through social media. They're ready to ask for higher prices for their packages. They're ready to start writing a book or ask to speak on stage because now they have all of those visual assets and tools that they feel so good about that is creating this sort of standout brand. And now they're no longer just a business. They're this recognizable brand that people are connecting with because they have been sharing their story, that they now know crystal clear. So I think it's like that's the process. It's the steps that I work with my clients, from the download, the brain dump, to figuring out a strategy, to then going to the creative brainstorming of what stories we want to tell visually, to then executing them, to then getting to this feeling of leadership and expertise because you're armed with the tools to share your story. And it's really an amazing transformation when you see it, because people might come in the beginning and be very unclear, and they'll almost ask me to help create a brand that looks like somebody else that's out in the market. And it's easy to do that, right? Because we have social media and you can see everybody else's brand and you can feel it. So it's easy to be like, I want to look like her. I want my colors just to be like that person. But then again, you have to dig a little bit deeper and be like, well, why? We all have our own story. You can't copycat someone else's, because then it's just going to be generic and just blend in with everyone else. And then in the long term, it's not going to have the legs to keep you going because it wasn't authentic to who you were in the first place. So if you can get really clear on your story first and do that hard strategic work and ask yourself those tough questions, it'll be so helpful later with any marketing or any branding that you have.
Mm-hmm. And then mirroring on absolutely on what Karen said, really, as you're going through that process, take a look at your beliefs, take a look at what that is. But I feel like what both of you ladies do for your clients is really reconnect them to themselves. Like Malika, I could see when someone looks at their self visually and their story visually, that they go, oh my gosh, yes, there it is. And then Karen, it's the same with you. When you work with your clients and walk through them in a session or a workshop or in your books, it's a reconnection to who we want to be, not necessarily to do. And Can we talk a little bit more? Let's go into a little bit more of the unseen, because once they have that spark, and Malika, you've already sort of said it, they're ready to go and move. But I feel like, again, back to the unseen, for me, when I connect to something that I know is from my soul, it feels solid in me. There's a difference, and I can feel it in my body. So I feel it as, like I said, solid. It feels whole to me. And when I hear myself speak it out, and Karen, I'm going to go to you first, and then Malika, you second, because I'm sure you see this too. To my ear, I hear it differently. I can hear it in somebody else, even when I work with my own clients, what rings true versus what doesn't. And I feel like the world, the unseen, can feel that energy like a ripple effect. And that opens up something to somebody else. Karen, do you feel the same? I'll start with you, and then Malika, I'm going to ask you the exact same question. So.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think maybe one of the words that we can put to this concept is confidence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as Malika was talking, and I listened to her process of going through the strategy and defining who you are and what your lane is, and then doing the photography, it occurred to me, I got very excited about the idea that now you have a person that you're going to photograph who is at the peak of her feeling or his feeling of self-confidence. And what better way to take a photograph of someone than when they're feeling confident? Because a lot of people, when they go for a photo shoot or have their picture taken, they're so self-conscious, right? But if you're feeling really good about yourself, and then you get a little styling help too, going out there and the shine in you is what the camera can pick up. So I really thought that was a brilliant idea, Malika. It really was. And the same holds true. The idea is like, how do you elicit your own confidence? Mm-hmm. And I will say that, kind of a little funny saying, but other people's opinion of you really doesn't matter. Where your clients are coming from and who's hiring your service, of course that matters. That's a reflection of what you're providing. But the naysayers or the people that are out there that you think have it all together, you can't set yourself up comparatively using other people's examples as the model for how you express yourself. Because as soon as you use someone else as your bar, if you think that in any way that they're in a better place, they're doing better, they feel better about themselves, they look better, then that bar is always going to continue to be a gap. And if you can't feel that you're at the place where you want to be with confidence, if you always put yourself in a position to feel less than, then it's going to be difficult for you to shine and get to that place where you were just talking about, the trueness of you. Okay, that's what the authentic self is, the trueness of you, your shine, your sparkle. I know when I started speaking, the idea of being a public speaker was formidable and impossible to me. And the only reason I even did it was because I really, really, really had something to say. So that feeling of wanting to share something helped me to override the feeling of I don't want to speak in public. But then once I got into that lane and I was speaking, in the beginning, coming from a business background and needing to be punctual and factual and, knowledgeable, I might have been a bit serious, yet that's really not my true nature. And now I can speak and I can be funny or silly or whatever. And I don't feel an attachment to how people are perceiving me, as long as they're feeling good about the content and the quality of the information and the experience. And I find that, people relate to me having the courage up there on the stage to be myself rather than being perfunctory or predictable or factual only. When you realize that you can relate to someone that wants to just show you who they are, it helps you to see that in business, interpersonal relationships, people are attracted to those that act as they truly are. It gives them a feeling of trust and confidence. Okay. I know in the first couple of years I did this, I went to a crazy number of networking events, and those couple of years really helped me to launch my own business. And I could feel the energy when I was networking with someone that felt inadequate versus someone that felt confident that I have something of value to offer you. And the difference is one knew him or herself and the other one was not confident in themselves or their service or their product.
Mm-hmm. And again, it seems like the way to get around that is to look at your beliefs, look at what's stopping you,
Yes.
and see that. But Malika, Malika is a master at branding, but also, like I said earlier, I think, Malika, it's amazing when you use photography and take that picture of that person that has gone through and done that work, because it's that reminder. We can actually view our own energy, when you're in that moment, and how we don't really get the chance to see ourselves outside of ourselves in that moment. And Malika, you have a way of capturing that in that person, whether it's a personal photo or something in a business and a brand. And I think the energy of that moment serves to connect to everyone around you, but also serves back to your own self to remember, hey, this really is who I am. And I can be that person, whether you're zany or funny or whatever it is. You can break through those barriers and have that itself. And I just want to say one thing that I find. We've been talking about branding and marketing and getting through our story and being able to go through those steps so that we can show the world with confidence. But I also feel that when we use our unique gifts and talents, we can use them to create. When we've gone through those steps and figured out our story and figured out what makes us different, I feel like we can know that those pieces that are in us and create from that space. So let me give you an example. Like I can be a surgeon, right? And using my hands all the time, and I'm brilliant at what I do. But maybe I also have come to realize that I love to sing. So maybe I sing before I do surgery, or I've got music while I'm doing surgery and I'm singing, and that gets me out of my head. And then I can do what I'm meant to do more easily. Malika, do you ever do this kind of exercise with your clients? Do you find that once they start remembering who they are, that they can use something like that to tap in? Because I feel like that raises our vibration, just doing what we love. And then we can get out of our head and we can create from a higher vibration.
No, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the work that I do with my clients, the visual stories that I try to capture for them, is not just on the business level, but it's also on the personal level, because I work with so many, women entrepreneurs. And so their personal brand is really just as important as the business side and, the products and services that they're delivering. It's the personality that has to connect, because most of them are like solopreneurs. They're like a one-woman show. So it's so important to understand all of their layers. So, what their vibe is like, what are the things that they love to do on the side, outside of work, and trying to pull those into the visuals that I'm sharing, because then you can speak better to your tribe, to the people that you're trying to attract. So for example, if I work with a business coach who's all about, mentorship and leadership and, six-figure profits and all of that business stuff, but yet she has this other, Zen side, we might include like prayer beads, a Buddha at her desk, some inspirational quotes of meditation. And by layering that together, then she's able to speak to someone who would be the right client for her, because she can now connect to them better, because she, told her story and layered in a personal with the professional. So I think it's important to merge both of those, especially as, people who have a personal brand or a solopreneur where everything is sort of blended, to be honest. Your personal, your professional, there's no strong delineation anymore, especially with online media where you're seeing like, your personal Facebook page is linked to your business Facebook page. There's no boundaries really so much anymore. And people are going to check out your personal page to see what you're like even before they hire you, because they're trying to understand your vibe. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like this full expression of you that is not just your business and your achievements and your awards and your deliverables, but it's also how it feels to work with you. And, what are you being a part of? What kind of a community are now you're going to be experiencing? Like, if you think about Nike, when you're wearing a Nike shirt, it's not just about like the performance of the shoe or the clothing. It's because you want to feel that Just Do It tribe. You want to be part of that. It's a feeling. So I think that's a big thing now with business and branding, that you're trying to get people out of just the features and the benefits, but really getting them into the connection and the feeling and being in the community. And that's where sometimes that personal layer comes in hand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Karen, what do you think from that end? Yeah.
Oh, I completely agree.
Yeah.
And adding to her point and going back to my other point too, about that you can't use other people and their efforts or
Mm-hmm.
their businesses as a measure of your worth or your own value. So sometimes it is kind of important that you do go into a little bit of your own lane.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the ability and the confidence to use other people's stuff as inspiration, that's fantastic. But if you find that looking at other people's stuff feels as though it's deflating you, then turn away or switch your own perspective to say, well, if this person is ahead of where I might want to be,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that they're demonstrating or reflecting in their brand? How are they making me have this feeling like they might be the right person to hire? And try to take that as an asset, try to take that as something to model rather than something to feel, less than about yourself about. That's the hardest thing. I don't see necessarily that there's a definitive difference between men and women that we can clearly define it. However, culturally, women are often raised to believe that they are the caregivers and the nurturers. Therefore, other people's needs are ahead of their own. If you are in a role where most of your life has meant that someone else's needs are superior to yours, one of the unfortunate byproducts of that is you may begin to forget what your own interests and needs and joys are. And so to ignite that within you, to really pay attention to the things that make you feel happy, even when you're not working, helps to make you more confident in the lane. If you're sitting with a client and you're talking about the numbers and you're putting together a proposal and you find out that, she's wearing a dragon necklace and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I love drawing dragons. And you have this uncommon thing. Well, how would you have known that you had this uncommon thing if you never sat down and drew a dragon? So it's actually really important that you pursue recovering and recapturing the things that excite you. What is interesting to you? Doesn't matter what it is, just be conscious of what it is and then pursue it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that you're both saying this. It's sort of being repeated because, again, as Malika touched on this and Karen, you did too, with the internet and social media and so many people, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're working for a Fortune 500 company, I think with work, oftentimes we feel like we're on 24/7. There's that pressure to want to be there. And you guys are reminding people, hold on, block your time, take a break from there. It's going to refuel your own battery and it's going to continue to put you in touch with who you are. And what's unique about you. It will help you to not take a look at what everybody else is doing. It will give you that moments or that time to reconnect and open up your own intuition so that you're flowing. You're not stopping. I want to open this up to everybody attending and find out if anybody out there has any questions thus far. If you want to just go ahead and type it into the Q&A, I'll read them out loud and we can see if we can answer some of your questions. We'll just take a moment here and see if anybody has anything. So anybody have anything? And if you don't, I'll use this time to go ahead and ask Malika and Karen if there's anything that they want to say in summary that maybe came up for them as we're getting close to the time to wind down. So Malika, I'll go ahead and start with you. Do you have anything that?
Sure. So, as we were speaking, these words were coming to my mind about a process that we can all do to kind of get to the point in our branding where we feel confident and feel like we're getting noticed for our own gifts. And the first is clarity. Like, you really need to sit down and get clear on who you are as a person, what you do, and how you're different. And then once you get some of that clarity, you'll find that you get this sort of fire, right? You feel confident. You feel really good about what your story is. And when you have the confidence, then you're able to communicate it to the world, because now you feel like you have a platform to stand on. And when you're communicating it, you'll start connecting with the right people, be it clients or collaborators or your community. You'll be able to connect at a level which could lead to conversion, which means you have clients and sales, which is why we're all in business. But it's that, you can see like alliteration, all of those C's of, clarity, confidence, communication, connection to maybe conversion, that can really help you create a brand that is your own, that has legs, that to sort of have that longevity and sustainability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And Karen, what are your thoughts?
What I would like to add is, I have a client I was talking to the other day. She owns an engineering company, and she's right now in the middle of being a part of a group where female entrepreneurs are entering into this program for 3 months by application and through interview to really learn how to excel and to get all of the components of their business ready for a 5-year plan of expansion and abundance. And one of the things that she said to me, which I thought was really interesting, she said, when I'm with all of these women who are so successful in their own right, she said, I was really amazed to hear someone say that being a solopreneur or being an entrepreneur and running an organization, it's the loneliest thing on earth, because it's really hard to find people that are connecting with your perspective or your drive or your self-reliancy, okay? And so one of the things that's so important is we're bringing intuition back into this conversation. It's important to remember that you're not alone. And I don't mean this in a corny way at all. I mean that you have to understand that there's more to life than what we see and feel and touch. Like you were talking about, the 5 senses. There is this universal energy and specific souls and energies that are here to guide and assist and help us enhance our belief in ourselves. And looking for and knowing that it's there and acknowledging those signs and that encouragement and breathing into it, it helps to give you the ability to take what feels like an invisible energy and make it a visible, viable partner. I know that it's what I've relied on to launch my business and to redefine where I'm going each year, because I have confidence that that source is not encumbered by human drama or misinformation or misbeliefs. So I find it to be a more helpful and buoyant source of energy than maybe necessarily what I'm hearing or seeing just from the human perspective. So I say intuition also is to grab that idea that there's something else here that's helping us, and know and honor and appreciate and use that support for yourself.
Absolutely. And Karen, that goes back to what you started with. There's so many things in the media that can be so negative that can pull us down, but there is the unseen, and we're meant to tap into and use the unseen as much as we are the seen, actually even more so. And it's a feeling. And I think when we go through the steps that both Karen and Malika laid out, when you're clear, when you have that clarity about who you are, and again, remember what Karen said in the beginning, you're going to want to carry that notebook with you, because this is what I know. When intuitive hits come in, they tend to come in for me when I'm driving or when I'm in the supermarket, because my brain is relaxed. They don't necessarily come in when I sit down to do that blog on whatever I need, or at least the idea doesn't always come in that way for me. So if you've got the notebook, you can tap into, oh my God, that's a great idea. Let me write it down. And then the energy of that thought that came in is in that notebook. So you can grab onto it later and tap back into it. And again, what Malika said, be clear, will help you with that clarity. You can dive back into, okay, what are my beliefs if you need to? in regards to this, if you start to find yourself feeling like maybe it's too big of an idea or too big of a project to go to, you can use what Malik is saying, go back in, tap back into what are your beliefs behind it. As Karen said, oh, maybe it's connected to your childhood. Okay, we'll go in that direction and bring that forward again. And there's an ebb and flow to it. And for me, as I said earlier, it feels solid. And maybe that's that confidence that comes back that the two of you were talking about that you can start to work off of. And then I really think it bounces off of you to somebody else. It ignites who they are and who your people are around you and comes back to you. And then you start really finding a flow. So I really thank you ladies for joining me today. I love, as I said at the beginning, my passion is to take the logical and the intuitive and marry them together. It's just something that I love to do. I've been doing it since I was 4 years old. I think we're all meant to do that, but I have that analytical brain that wants to ask question after question, but then balance so much with my intuition. And I love taking huge ideas that are not of this world and applying them to life and then finding a way to share that with everybody else. So I want to give our attendees the information on how to contact you two ladies, because I think you're both fantastic in what you do. And I know you have so much more to share with people one-on-one. So Malika, I'll go ahead and start with you. You're out here in New Jersey, and give people an idea of if they want to work with you, how to get a hold of you. And I know you've got a ton of workshops coming up, so let's start with you.
Sure. So I live in the northern New Jersey area in Short Hills. My website is the best place to find out more about me, and that's mikiphoto.com, MIKIFOTO.com. And I work mostly, one-to-one with women entrepreneurs who are looking to create visuals to help build their brand and help them stand out. So it's part strategy, part storytelling, and then photography. I also just wrote a book, as you mentioned earlier, called the Brand Photography Playbook, which really helps people get an understanding of how to plan a successful brand photo shoot, because it can be so overwhelming because there's so many balls that'll be up in the air, from styling to locations to the actual stories that you want to share. So I try to outline how I work with my clients, so it can help you if you're in California or in the Midwest and you can't get access to me. Now you have the tools to sort of help you. And I do workshops in the area. I love the in-person sort of face-to-face workshop. And so my next one will be called Brand Confidential, which is funny. We've been talking about confidence all morning. But that is for someone who has just started a business but really wants to build a brand. And so they're on the newer and the newbie scale, and I help them, just as we were talking about today, figure out what their story is. And then there is also a professional headshot, so they get a little taste and a great way to kind of build their brand in the earlier stages. So thank you so much for inviting me today and for this opportunity. It's been great.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. And Karen, I know you're in New York, and you also do workshops. You're all over the map. So how can attendees get a hold of you if they want to work with you one-on-one?
Same as Malika, the website is the easiest place to follow what I'm up to, KarenGarvey.com. I have an online happiness course called Happy in 90. In Happy in 90, each day you have a different exercise for 90 days, or 30 if that's what you begin with, or 60. But by the end of the program, by the end of the course, you're guaranteed to be happier than you were when you began the course. And that's called happyin90.com. As I said earlier, I also have a couple of social media places where people can meet and find an alternative to the news that might be suggesting that we live in a crummy world, and to give us that oasis of seeing we really, really live in a wonderful world. And that would be on Facebook, Piece It Together. That's PEACE, Piece It Together. And I have a page there called Soul Smart as well, where I put up an inspirational thought, something channeled every single day. And my own personal page, Karen L. Garvey, I do the same.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for joining me. Just in closing, I'm Jen Louziotis. I run a intuitive coaching business, but I work with numerology. That's my jumping off point with clients. And I feel like I work around their numbers, their soul path number, and we start there, and then we go ahead and look at their life story. And I look at their special gifts and talents and kind of reflect that back to them. And it's something that I think clients walk away with and have, again, to blend in with all the other pieces that they know about themselves. So they can take their logical mind, but then they can take this and kind of ignite back who they wanted to be from a soul level. It's my passion. It's what I love to do, in addition to webinars like this, because I'm constantly learning myself. So look for more webinars like this. You can find me at jenlouziotis.com, as well as on Facebook, same name. And for years, I did an internet radio show with Janelle Hoyland called Spiritual Happy Hour. So that's running in retro, so to speak, on Blog Talk Radio, as well as I'm always throwing up old episodes on Spiritual Happy Hour, our Facebook page. So, if you love the webinar, please give me some feedback and let me know. I'm going to be doing more in the future, but please contact Karen and Malika. These are two amazing women who are out there living their life, their soul's, dream, if you will, and really showing us how to do it. So thank you, ladies, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody else that attended. I really appreciate it, and look for more. And have a happy Monday.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.